host has unmuted your mic, and I suspect I am alone. So this is for the people watching this later in the playback. We're continuing our nature theme this time. And I'm waiting for Kat to show up and figure out this app version. This is strange being alone. How do I do this? Sorry for the technical issues. But I guess I can start. I'm assuming maybe one or two people come in. It doesn't show me. So tonight, we wanted to talk about Kickstarter. It's something I've had the gallery for almost 23 years at this point. And we started out buying and selling art, and we've subsequently moved into spending a lot of time kind of funding modern art projects and also really especially some really wonderful publishing projects. And the thing that we have found as the tool that really helps manifest those things is Kickstarter. And when we did our first Kickstarter, it was for a comic book called Cursed Pirate Girl. And it was the highest funded comic on Kickstarter at that time. And I think it was maybe $15,000. That was an astronomical amount at that time. Well, since then, this is over a decade ago. Since then, obviously, campaigns have reached unbelievable heights, and Kickstarter has become really omnipresent in the creative community. So my intention tonight is to just try to make myself available to answer any questions, either if you are just someone who loves to fund Kickstarters or has loved things that we've done and wants to know something about what our process was or is, or if you're a creative person who has either hit a challenge with something with Kickstarter that you'd like to transcend, or if you've never done it and you want to know how to get your feet into that water. I can't say enough wonderful things about it. Everyone that I've interacted with at Kickstarter has been so extraordinary that aside from just respecting them professionally, they're all people I really genuinely like. And then even more importantly, the audience for these projects have become a community that I'm not only extremely grateful for, but I've met so many wonderful people through that process. So it's good on all counts. Hi, Kat. Kat just showed up. So I can't see the chat feed on my thing. So welcome to anyone who's here. Do you have anything you'd like to share with me?
Happy to see you. I'll tell you that.
You just showed up in the feed.
All right. We've got Forrest here with us.
Hello, Forrest. Are you losing your signal? Sorry for the technical difficulties. It's so beautiful here. I think it's the Art Nouveau lover in me that just loves this kind of, it's like live from Rivendell. Will you interrupt me if you have a question? Otherwise, I will just talk. Okay. I brought this book out. This is one of the Kickstarters that we've done that I'm proudest of. It's this enormous book. And this is a really great example of something that would never have been able to happen in a pre-Kickstarter era. The way that traditional publishing works is that there needs to be an audience for something, a budget that makes sense according to that audience. And so with something as decadent as this Le Pater book, the idea that, and this is kind of a cliche to say, but you're literally connecting the people who want the thing directly with, in this case, me as the creator. And so all of the funding goes directly towards the creation of the thing, which means every penny was going into the creation of the book. Something just popped up for 1 second. And so in this case, it took years to write and create the book. Can you turn that volume down? Just turn the volume down. Why not? Okay. How does one go about planning a timeline for a Kickstarter? Forrest asked, which is that is a great segue. I will include that now in my Le Pater story. So normally the way that someone would plan it, I mean, it's kind of a complicated answer, because one of the things that's happened a lot with us with Kickstarter is that we really know the ropes at this point, but it really should be utilized by people that don't know what they want to do or what their timelines are. And so what I mean by that is, like, say for example, you have an idea for I don't know, let's just say it's a book. I think you should be able to lay out to people, hey, I've done this before, but I haven't done this. You can definitely ask other people about their experiences. But one of the things about Kickstarter at its best is that there's a quote that Adam Jones from Tool said that I really love. He said, "It's not good when it's done when it's good." And so the reason that your question kind of relates really well to Le Pater is that it took so much longer than I thought it was going to, but it's also the thing that I'm proudest of. And so when you're planning a timeline, I think that you should ask as many questions as you can of other people that have done it. You should make sure that you understand what it's going to cost to print, what shipping is going to cost. Like, definitely ask other Kickstarter creators things that they ran into. But also be open to the idea that it might not work that way, and that it's okay that does. Kickstarter, before people really understood what it was, we would finish a campaign and immediately we would get emails saying, well, when is our thing going to ship? And at this point, people understand that they're buying into the idea that you're creating something. Updates are important in keeping people in the loop when you're going to be late, when things take longer. That's also a little complicated because there are a lot of people who don't look at any of the updates or ever check in on anything. And so it can feel a little bit kind of like this right now, where I'm speaking to an inanimate object and there's no feedback or give or take. So the comment sections and emails on Kickstarter are really good for that. But in terms of how to plan a timeline, I think you need to ask someone that's done it before, and then just use that as guideposts. Sean just said both the Freaks and Le Pater were absolutely worth the wait. Thank you. Those are far and away the most decadent printing that we did. The Freaks ones, every image that's in there was die stamped, cut out. The entire book is hand-bound, letterpress. It is really a work of art. The man Lance, who put it all together, is really creative and extraordinary and gifted. And I worked really hard on the design. And the thing that took so long was that it was all handwork. It wasn't something you could just outsource. So God bless him, he had to do every one of those books by hand. That's why it was such a small edition. And then Le Pater, it just turned into, I think that it was so much information, and that distilling it not only took longer than I thought, but you just know when you can do more. And with some books, I will be honest, I look at the deadline and I keep the deadline as hard. And I always know I could do a little better, but I think it's more important to be consistent with our timelines and only allow myself maybe a week or two to delay. But with Le Pater, it was so personal. And I really want to thank the people who wrote to me that were really supportive about saying, you have to make sure it's extraordinary for you and not because, you know, anyone is maybe rushing you or something like that. So it did take a lot longer than expected, but you know, hopefully for the next 100 years, this is a book that's an important part of any dialogue about mystic art, symbolism, Art Nouveau. Kat, I'm just going to keep talking. Is it literally just Sean and Forrest in here? Which I appreciate both of you.
We've got some other people here. Please don't be shy. Feel free.
Yeah, if you guys have questions, I mean, really, you know, I mean, I can obviously ramble. I don't mind doing that, but mostly I was trying to make myself available. And the reason it's great about putting things like this on YouTube, there's people like my friend Christian is getting ready to do a Kickstarter, and I know that he is in the wrong time zone to watch this. And so that, you know, hopefully there'll be things that people can watch later. I will ramble a bit on Christian. Christian has a band called the Webb Brothers, and I'll share something that I told him, which is an important thing for any Kickstarter campaign is laying groundwork. I've definitely had people that have started a campaign and they come to me 50% of the way through, and there's no backers other than their parent or parents. And they're saying, and I paid a publicist and I have no bids. I don't know what to do. And you don't want to get caught in that position. You want to use the time before your Kickstarter to build a mailing list so that you're in connection with the audience that's going to want the thing that you're doing. So what Christian's doing, and this was completely his idea, is on social media, he's been posting stories about the history of the band, the Webb Brothers, and telling people to sign up for their mailing list. And the stories are extraordinary. It's great to read, and he's getting the people that are the existing fan base aware that something is coming. So he's completely nailing it. He's doing it the right way. How do we come up with the rewards and add-ons? I mean, there's two answers. There's two sides to that answer. Both. Oh, extra. Same thing. More add-ons. I mean, okay. So there's two answers to this. The first one is the romantic one, which is that we try to think about things that we think would be really cool. And then the other part of the answer, and then I'll go into more detail about both, is then we also think about shipping. And the reason that I say that is like anything, there's commerce attached to this. And so if you're, for example, I don't like folded posters. So if we're making a book and the book is, 13 by 19, I don't know, whatever size, let's say it's 8 by 10 book. But then you make a poster with it that's 9 by 12. Well, you would have to roll it, put it in a tube. That is a separate amount of shipping. So one of the things that we try to do is start out with kind of the barrier of what could we fit with this in a package so that we're not having to charge extra for shipping. And it's just a subtle, small saving that I think people do appreciate and I think helps. If something were really, really perfect, then of course you have to do it. But we do look at shipping. And then the other thing, as far as like how we think of things, I collect a lot of weird old things. I like to buy old, I don't know, cookie cutters from the 30s. And I'm constantly buying little promotional packaging and stuff like that. And then I'm constantly using those as ideas. And so even things like when we did Aurora, we made that little light up pin thing where the creature's eyes were flashing. To me, that was just like something I would have seen in the comic book store in the 70s, you know, next to the pinball arcade. It just seemed like a fun, weird, retro thing. And so I'm trying to think of things that aren't reinventing the wheel that someone can manufacture easily, but that might not normally apply in the context. Like for a black and white artsy science fiction film, you might not think about a weird campy pin thing. I don't know. The wax cylinder that we did to release the, with the soundtrack or the vinyl. I think a lot of it is just stuff that I kind of want, like the nerd in me that wants, like, oh, it'd be cool to have a wax cylinder that glows in the dark. And oh my gosh, we've got this recording of Genesis Peorage. And what if we put that on wax cylinder and made a glowing, a little Edison thing that's the creature speaks? It just felt fun and cool and weird. And there was a question from Forrest that came up, but I didn't see it. Do you recommend using... I personally don't like the package deal companies, personally. For a couple of reasons. One, I'm never doing a quantity where I need that. Meaning, if I was selling 15,000, I don't know, hot air balloons or something, where like I couldn't have it in my house or in a workspace, I might have to look at something like that. But they tend to be pretty expensive. They're charging you for that service. And so if they're doing, like, if they say, oh, we'll do a book and we'll do your poster and we'll do this and then we'll package it and ship it out for you, they are charging you for all of that. So if you need to do that because you don't have space or the bandwidth for it, then it's fantastic that they're offering a service. If you do have kind of a DIY mindset, then I would absolutely suggest doing it yourself. Making a movie night of it and getting your friends over and rolling up poster tubes and whatever it is. You want to make sure that you're getting great references for anyone that you hire for any work. We've had a lot of problems with vendors, and then also some really great success stories. And so I think if you ask around beforehand, you'll avoid a lot of conflicts. So whatever it is specifically that you're trying to do, maybe post on social media, post on Kickstarter, ask some Kickstarter creators that you know. Have you worked with this company? Have you done this? Or who have you used to do this? And some people are really shy about that. I like sharing contacts. I think it's important that we're all supportive of each other, and it's hard. Is there a way to tell before launching a campaign if there's an audience for it, i.e. graphic novels by artists that aren't household names yet? Is it always a gamble? I would say, hi Eric, by the way. I'm in the Midwest, Eric, if you can't tell from the lush foliage. I think that the most expensive thing with making a graphic novel is the labor. And so I'm going to speak to you specifically, assuming that you are asking about considering doing something. You have a really great body of work, and the work is really good. And you've got a good social media presence. And so the biggest expense is your time and your energy. So if you put that time and energy in, the only thing that you really need to fund is the printing bill. Is it a risk? It's always a risk. But there's ways to kind of reduce that risk. I look at it, I always feel like a Kickstarter campaign is like firing an arrow. That if you've got like a kid's play set and you try to shoot and hit the bullseye, there's no way that arrow is going to go straight. But if you've got an arrow and the shaft is polished and you've got a steady hand and a strong bow, all of that, when you let the arrow fly, it will hit its target. Um, it's kind of like Antiques Roadshow. I've very rarely been surprised when something has had challenges. If someone is showing me their Kickstarter and they're saying, hey, could you give me some notes on this? It may be a tough critique, but I usually can tell you're not offering rewards that are commensurate with what you're doing, and you're going to run into trouble. It's like if someone is making an indie film and the only thing they have is for $50, you get a free download. Like, who's going to pay that money when you can get so much free content? And so sometimes the thing that you make maybe isn't what you think. Like, for example, maybe like, for you, someone who's a really talented and experienced graphic designer, maybe you've got a pledge tier where for $150 you'll send the graphic novel, but you'll also do a portfolio review. That's something that you have that's in your wheelhouse, that's just time for you, that you can offer to your campaign. And in that mindset, I guess one of the things that I should add is that it's important to really look at the community idea. And so if you're posturing, I'm making this thing, you should like it, you should buy it, it's hard for new creators to do. And I don't think that experienced creators should do it. I mean, this is kind of a good example. We do a lot with our campaigns that isn't necessarily connected to me giving back to the community, but that's why I'm doing this tonight. Like, I feel that that's an important part of the relationship with the platform. And so for you or for anyone who's a new creator, look at what you already have that you can bring to the table, that you can kind of put into the pot a little bit. It's like Shark Tank. If there's a company and the person's there trying to raise money, and then it comes up that they have an existing business, and the sharks all say, well, is that part of the deal? And they say no. Well, that's hard. And so, yeah, think of some things that are relevant that you can kind of put in, like maybe for, maybe it's commissions of other things. Maybe it's, I may not have done this, but I think that when I did the first wax cylinder Kickstarter, I offered that you could come to LA and I would record you, like a recording session. I may not have done that because it's really complicated and hard to do, and so I might have taken that out. But that's the kind of thing that if I were starting from scratch and was really worried about hitting my numbers, I would be looking at other things like that. And then the other asterisk I'll just put on that is the weird, cool other things factor. You don't want to muddy your water. You don't want to distract from what the thing is. But anything that you can do that's a value add that lets people put more in if they want to. Like, we do the postcard sets is a great example of that. Sorry for the noise. Now we're going to get flagged by YouTube. One of the reasons that we do that is people like them. They've told us repeatedly, we love these postcards. I saw some dealer was buying postcard sets from us and then just selling them individually online. Like, that's great, that's fine. But in keeping with what we talked about earlier, they fit in the same box with the book. It is a value add that per unit the cost is lower, and those are the things that help us fund these, because when you're doing crowdfunding, you're never going to hit the numbers, like the quantities that you would through a distributor. So it's okay to buy into and nurture that community idea of saying, I'm going to add something on as a pledge or as an add-on that, yes, does cost more, just make sure that the price is commensurate. Like, you don't want to do a $75 tote bag. Just make sure that the price makes sense, so that you're being mutually respectful with them the way you want them to be with you. T-shirts can be complicated, but sometimes things like that are good. Do you have anything for me?
Yes, Sean has a great question.
Sean has a great question. I don't know. I always have to watch myself because I will ramble nonstop. Tom, since I follow you on Kickstarter, I see all the projects that you create, but also the ones you support. How does your experience as a creator inform what projects you back? I back projects for multiple reasons. Lately, I've been backing more comic book things because I have a comic book related Kickstarter that I'd like to do. And so I'm doing it to kind of see how they do it. That's part of it. And so I feel like if I'm going to be studying their campaign, to throw $15 in to get a copy of the book is, again, it comes back to that idea. It's respectful to me. Then the other thing is I use the search engines and I look for projects that aren't funded. So I will look for things that are close to funded that need a boost. I will admit that there are times where I've put unreasonable amounts of money onto something to help it get across the finish line. We used to put this in our campaigns, but you're not supposed to do this, so we haven't. But I try to put 5% of what we make on Kickstarter back into the platform. And so there are times where I've seen someone that's making a film or something, and they're just having a hard time hitting something, and I'll throw in the big amount of money for the associate producer credit or that kind of thing, or even just someone making a graphic novel, and the higher tier has where you get an artwork with it or something. So those are the things that's the second thing. And then the third is that there are things that I'll back just because they do seem interesting to me. I'm answering this question in a little bit of a weird way because I definitely am one of those people that has way too much stuff. And most of what I'm interested in is older. So when I do see something, like a really great letterpress book, or like I just did a big pledge on God, who is it? Oh man, it's not Beehive Books. Beehive Books is amazing, but there's a few companies like that I really love what they do, and it's inspirational to me to get the books. It's a book I would buy in a store, and I love that when I'm buying something through the Kickstarter platform that they're getting all of it. So I would say maybe a third of it is stuff that I'm really interested in for the thing. A third is something that I think if I had more space, I would be interested in, but I'm going to bite the bullet and support it because they need it, and I'm in a position to do so with my 5% pushback into Kickstarter thing. And then the other part is there's times just where oh, hi Christian Webb is here. And there's times when I'm just trying to learn a little bit, but there's things like, there's times when I've, like, especially, like, I think I saw someone doing enamel pins and they were like so not going to hit their goal, and I put a couple $100 in to get an enamel pin. And I'm not saying that like to be boastful in any way. I'm saying it just in the sense of, like, that's a big part of what Kickstarter is. And for me, I'm so grateful that the platform exists, and I've had people do that for me. There's someone on one of the Orchid Garden that put in money to give a dedication in the book once, and I'm really grateful for that, because that's the kind of stuff that means that I don't have to be getting on the phone trying to sell a piece of art or the other things with the gallery. And so when we do the Kickstarter work, it's a very different lifestyle. It is a large reduction in income, but it's infinitely more fulfilling. It's not just about commerce. When you sell a piece of art, it really is just commerce. The people that are buying it so rarely love it. Mostly they're decorating. Whereas I'm 50 now, and so all of these things that I have in my head, getting them into the books uh, feels like it's the right thing to do. And I'm happy to have a different lifestyle. Kickstarter is really affording me that gift. And so anyway, so that's why I do kind of the big thing. Forrest wants to know how to maintain a margin on a project with prices of paper being in flux. That is impossible. It's a huge problem right now. It's a huge problem. We've had like the last Berlin Girls books just arrived in the country. They should be here in a week or two. It took months longer than it normally would. Months longer. We had a bunch of damages on the Le Pater soft cover, which if you backed it on Kickstarter, we made sure that you got a copy. But we don't have copies now for retail. And that's going to be months before we get those. So that's not even now getting into the cost issue that you're talking about. So the thing that you just have to do is if you're doing something that's a publishing project where there are issues in that regard that could be a problem, I think you just need to try to do your campaign as close as you can until you're really going to utilize that vendor. Meaning, if you're looking for money to create a graphic novel and it's going to take you a year to do, you might run into a problem with that. It could go the other way. Everything could open up and you might find that the costs go down. But what I would say at this moment in time is I would advise anyone looking to do a Kickstarter that utilizes supply chain to assume it's going to take twice as long for any of the parts that are out of your control. And then for anything that comes with sourcing, just maybe assume it's going to be 10-15% more than you think, and just try to do it as close as you can to the time that you'll actually be utilizing that. That may not help if you are someone that's looking for Kickstarter to support the creation of it. So that's a little complicated. I mean, it's kind of case by case. I would also say, in rambling in that regard, is that the more that you can have done, the better. There's a lot of people that'll say things like, yeah, but I've got this job, and if I could just stop working long enough to do this, then I could do, then I could do it. So if Kickstarter paid me to work for a while, I could finish this. And I think that's really hard. I think that the best thing to do is to figure out how to do it in your free time, treat it like a second job, and wait until you've got one thing under your belt and you've worked out some of the kinks before trying to fund something that still needs to be created. Do you have any questions? Kat says no. Like when we did the Cursed Pirate Girl one, Jeremy had already done the book. We were just looking to do a collected edition. And so the work was done. Like that was kind of an easy thing. It was a really good first thing because the issues I was dealing with were printing, fulfillment, logistics that are tangible. And I know when you get into creative projects, you can hit all kinds of variables around timelines. And I think that you want to keep for yourself the timeline of being finished when you want it to be finished, not when you have to deliver it. So, for example, if someone was making a record or a graphic novel or writing a book or any of that, I would do the work first at your pace, unless it's like you're a recording artist and you say, I'm going to go into this studio and record this live album and then we're going to send it to you, where you're putting some boundaries on it. Or if you're an author that's setting something up with some criteria-based boundaries, like, I don't know, it's event-based, or like a 24-hour comic thing where I'm going to do 1 page a day for 3 months or something like that. But if there's variables in creativity, then that's the benefit to Kickstarter. There's no boss. The boss are the people that are helping you bring it to life. And so whenever you get into a financial exchange for creativity, it's always complicated. It's always, there is I don't think this is telling tales out of class, but um I was I guess I can tell it. I was messaging something with Guillermo del Toro, and he just wrote me something like, I'm going through hell. And he was finishing Shape of Water. And I remember him saying that he'd had such a hard time with it that when I went to see it when it came out, I wrote him and I was like, look, man, whatever it is that you went through was worth it. The movie's extraordinary. And then, of course, it wins Best Picture, whatever else it won. And the reason that I'm sharing that is because I remember that all the time. I'm such a huge fan of his work. And he is such an artist with a capital A, in the sense of, like, you really know that he cares about what he's creating. And the fact that someone with his level of vision still had people like busting his chops in the 11th hour when he was trying to finish that movie it's ubiquitous. I mean, I've experienced it. I'm sure anyone creative watching this has experienced it. And so the real blessing to me about Kickstarter is that doesn't exist in the same way. There's an accountability and there's a dialogue, which are work in its own way. But there's no, like, I would get people all the time with this Le Pater book telling me, well, I don't want you to make it perfect. Just send me what you have now. And I'm like, well, that's disrespectful to these other 1,400 people that are waiting. And I'm glad that I waited. I'm glad that I did it the right way. I just refunded those people their money and said, please come back when the book is available for retail sale. But I can't accommodate you in this moment because the relationship that you're looking to have with me is not one that I'm willing to have. And, this is another, I don't know when it's name dropping or when it's like valid to a story. I hate when people are vague, so I'm going to name drop again. I got a really, really nice email during the Le Pater debacle. When we were running late, people were being really brutal, from Linda Moorcock, Michael Moorcock's wife. And there were a lot of people that reached out to me, a lot of creative people I respect. But the reason that I'm sharing the story with her is because of it does relate to this bigger Kickstarter arc. So she wrote me just a nice note saying, just make sure that you're proud of it. I live with a writer. And, people are going to be like that, but you have to be true to the art. And it meant so much to me because her husband, Michael Moorcock, was one of my huge influences, huge stepping stone in my development as a thinker, not just a reader or a writer, but as a thinker in the way that I looked at the world. And if you aren't familiar with his work, In 1961, he wrote a book called The Sundered Worlds that invented the pop culture idea of the multiverse. So everything that you're seeing in all the Marvel stuff and all that, he really is the person that brought that into the zeitgeist back in the 60s. And so fast forward, and I was fishing for book cover quotes. I'm not going to go into that long story, but this paperback edition, the introduction, is by Michael Moorcock. And so, like, what a crazy thing that couldn't have happened anywhere else but Kickstarter is that I was making this piece of art. I was feeling really, really like, teary-eyed and despondent over I'm disappointing these people. They're railing at me publicly. And I just have to refund their money. I was like emotionally stable enough to just say I can't give them what they want. But the fact that I got a letter like that, it opened up this relationship that ended then with this person whose work I admired, saying how much they love the work that I did. And in a traditional structure of commerce, that would never have happened. You have corporate structures, you have where people are afraid of getting in trouble with their boss, and so people will look at things and they say, well, I don't know if this is right or this is good. And it's like, based on what? On what criteria are you judging this? There's another friend of mine who's a musician that was going to play something for me, and he wanted to know if I thought it was good or not. And I said, I can't judge if it's good or not until you tell me what your goal was. And that's just me being like an art dealer. Like, what's your intention? And then I'll know. And he laughed and said, is that your way of telling me you don't like it? And I was like, no, it's like, what's your intention? And so if you're a creative person, the only person who can articulate and understand your intention is you. And so if you're in a structure where you're working with a traditional publisher, or if you're a musician working with a traditional label, all of these things, their criteria is always going to be financial first. It has to be. That's their function, and that's what their machine is. So it's like, what's your function? If your function is to be creative, then clearly articulate for yourself what your goal is. And with me, with Le Pater, it was making a book that made it possible for people to understand the lineage of mysticism as it related specifically to understanding this really complicated body of work. That was a crazy tangent, but I'm just going to keep talking until there's until there's questions. Sean asked, what do I do if I think something isn't going to get funded? I think that at this point, the only one that was really a pain in the butt for me was Aurora, because I worked harder on that than any other campaign. And it was like dragging a carcass uphill. It was so outside of what I had done before. I couldn't get coverage. I was getting great compliments from so many people publicly, and I just couldn't convert. You lose me for a second. I just couldn't get it to convert. So I think that I don't know that I've had a lot of campaigns where I'm afraid it's not going to get funded, as much as just experiencing the challenges of like dancing to the tune of automatic weapon fire, trying to figure out what am it's like tap dancing and stuff. I try to put as much of this in up front, and I try to envision where whatever I need to make, that the Kickstarter will make 3 times that, based on the rewards that I have and the audience that I believe that I have. And then this way I can fail 66% failure and still be okay. So that's just kind of what I've done. Was there another question that I missed? I feel like there was.
I have a question.
Kat has a question. What's your question, Kat?
My question is...
It's gotten very dark here in Rivendell.
What's your experience been with taking something from a purely creative zone and turning it into something that's almost of service to others. So you were talking.
Why don't you come here and ask me, because then they can hear you and I don't have to repeat it. So Kat has a question. Hi, Kat.
Guys. I am really here.
All right, what's your question?
So you were talking about working out the kinks around making rewards. So
Yes.
when you're working on something that you might be very creatively passionate about and it's all up in your head, how do you take it from kind of a more self-indulgent place and turn it into something that is truly a service or a product that others value beyond just, of course, being a work of art?
Thank you for your question. I think that what I do, I think she kind of answered it in the question, which is you have to look at how I'm doing of value or service to someone. Sometimes your imagination and your creation is of service. That's the thing unto itself. And so I think that one of the things I also like about Kickstarter is it can be as mom and pop as you want it, and it can go as you want it. And so, like, if you say, well, I want to create photos or something, you can do a Kickstarter that's got $150 target and tell all your family and friends it's $15 for me to come take your pet portrait. But I want to be able to dress them up characters or something like that. And you can do that at that level. So it just has to be commensurate with what it is that your expectations are. So, for example, Kat just did the Chuckle Emporium. She did her Beers de la Mears poster. And she had this idea. She's always walking around making puns. And of course, we're all laughing all the time. And she's like, what if I made this kind of like the big posters that we do? And it was very hard. It was her first Kickstarter, and I coached her somewhat. But there's a lot of learning curve with it, and I'm sure her next one will be better and better. But part of it is building an audience. Part of it too is thinking about, is the thing that I'm doing something that culturally we've been teaching people to get for free? There's some country music singer that was talking about, for 99 cents you can buy his song. And that's the same price that a 7-inch single, a 45, would have been when he started out in Nashville 40 years ago. Like, that's where we are culturally. Like, we don't value creativity. He also, I think it was him or maybe it was someone else, said for 99 cents, you can get an app that makes fart noises. That's kind of where we put creativity. So you do need to find a hook or a foothold or an audience or something. A big social media audience will not convert in most cases. That's kind of another thing. It's like, how do you build an audience for your thing? I think you need to build a real world audience. I think you need to build a mailing list. And so when you've got an idea that's a cool idea, if you did something and you put it on Kickstarter and it didn't succeed, it doesn't mean that the idea was bad, but in most cases, it does mean your Kickstarter was bad. I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody with a really cool idea. Like, there was somebody who was had a record that he'd made back in the 50s. It was like at Sun Studios or something, and he wanted to release it after all these years. It was a record that never came out. And I remember listening to it, and it was really cool. But it was something where, like, the rewards were really high. He didn't do any kind of outreach or promotion, and it didn't succeed. And I feel very badly that it didn't. But I could tell when I looked at the Kickstarter that it was going to be very hard for him. So I'm going to go back to that thing about the arrow. You can polish the arrow. you can build a good bow. And it may be a struggle, but you should be able to hit your target if you do those things, if you put that work in at the front end.
We have a couple more questions.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to shout out my dad's here.
Hello, sir. Here she is. Do we build the cost of our rewards into the overall Kickstarter goals, especially if you don't have the budget to produce them beforehand? Absolutely. You need to assume that you're going to have to pay for everything. And it's okay if you don't have any of the money. You can do a Kickstarter campaign with $0 in the bank. You just have to plan. Make sure you remember that Kickstarter takes 5% and the credit card company takes 5%. And there will be dropped pledges. So whatever it is that you need. Also, the Kickstarter number includes shipping. So you need to make sure that you're factoring that in as well. But yes, definitely assume that the rewards are going to need to be printed. And so you need to factor in, and you can kind of do it in stages, meaning, oh, if I only need 100 of these, this is what it's going to cost. But if I hit where I've got 101 people doing it, it's going to cost more. You can do it based on the 100. Because if you do have such a successful campaign that you go over that, then there'll be a bigger budget to work with. But as far as like the goal that you set, you can do it based on the minimum. But yes, definitely include those things. You find people who are passionate about what you're passionate about. How do you target that niche audience? I mean, I'm still that. I feel like I only hit the tiniest fraction of people who are our niche audience. I think that social media is a big help. I think that there's nothing wrong with asking people to share things. Just do it really politely. I think that it's so case specific. It's kind of hard for me to answer that just because it is case specific. With Century Guild, we were doing a lot of shows, and so we were doing a lot of in-person promotions for things that I know helped us. And I also know, like, even going back to the first one, like with Cursed Pirate Girl, I was just barraging social media, and I might have not had many Facebook friends at that time, but I did have enough, and I was asking friends to share it, and I was being shameless with it. And so I think it's important that whatever it is that you have, that the people that you're asking to either back it or share it are getting something that they would really want. And so in the case of the Cursed Pirate Girl book, I was so proud of what Jeremy did. It's so brilliant. It's so good. I got great quotes from really talented people to help people understand what they were getting. And we were offering a really cool book for the price that you would pay to buy it in a store. And then we offered lots of weird little things like variant colors for the cover and stuff like that that made it a little more of a party atmosphere in terms of you could get this here only. But it was, for me, social media and making sure that there was a public presence. If you were doing a book about you're going to a Dark Crystal show, if you were making a book about the making of Dark Crystal, setting up a little table or a booth there with a mailing list and just telling people I'm going to be doing this book on Kickstarter next year, and I'm just trying to collate names so everybody knows about it when it comes out. And you'll find that people want to sign up because they want to know about it. And if it's a book that has pictures that people haven't seen before and interviews they haven't heard and stuff like that, and the book is commensurate with what they would pay in a store, you will get people that do it. And it may not be normal distribution numbers, But it will be a number that allows you to make the thing, and probably at a higher quality point than it would have been if it went through a traditional distribution structure. We have 4.5 minutes left. Do you have a final question?
Yeah. I'm coming over.
Oh, she's coming over. It's so dark over here. It's dark in Rivendell. Can you even see her? Where is she? There we go.
I know that you and Chandra are both very good at this. How do you avoid, I should say it in a positive, how do you make room?
We practice that a lot,
Yes.
saying things in a positive language.
How do you make not only the story of the campaign, so what it is you're doing and why, but the reward structure direct and easy to understand? Because for me, at least, when I'm excited about something, I tend to just want to go on and on and on. And I know that it can get convoluted at times with a lot of different choices and all of that. So how do you streamline that? Do you have any tips for that process?
That's your 4-minute question? I'm just kidding. Okay. I'll make it a brief answer then. I'll practice that right now as the sun goes down on us. Is that better? The thing that I practice is I call people on the phone and I tell them what I'm doing, and I pretend that they don't have a lot of time. Well, I do that in my head first. And then when I call them, I try to respect that. And I find the ways that I'm conveying it to people that are succinct and make sense. And usually that's the way I find my way into it. So like if I have to say, well, what's this book that you're writing about? And I find myself giving a 3-minute answer, well, that's not going to work. I have to find the way in. And I think that's just like marketing. That's kind of just a general marketing thing, I think. Does that answer your question? Is it the marketing part of it? Or you mention rewards. How does that fit?
Well, if I have...
No one's going to be able to see you. It's way too dark.
I'm just kidding.
I can't believe how dark it got out here. I'm sorry about this, everybody, if you can't see me.
If I have a few different things and I want to offer them in different configurations, like packages, and maybe I've got an Art Nouveau package.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've got a, circus critter package. Maybe
all on the same campaign?
Yeah. I'm having trouble coming up with an example on the spot right now. But if somebody were to have different configuration options, maybe one of the packages has almost the same items, but there's a little bit more. And next thing you know, you've got 20 different reward packages. That's
too many rewards. I would say the fact that it was this complicated, I'm going to turn this on me just because we can't see you. The fact that question was so convoluted is what the challenge is. The challenge isn't naming them. The challenge is finding the focus. So if you're confused about what it is, then how can you make it succinct for someone else? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like if you ask a technician a question and they can give you, if they really understand how to fix the problem, they can give you a succinct answer. So the main thing is just whatever it is that you're doing should just all feed into the velocity of the campaign. So for example, if you are doing a campaign that's on your band making a record, but you're also really good at gardening, then I don't know that I would make a reward that is where I'll send you a box of my favorite gardening books. Just because if you do start to pile those up, then they do get confusing for someone. Whereas kind of like I mentioned earlier with Eric, you can have your comic book. You can also say, oh, and I'll do a portfolio review. Oh, and I'll also draw something for you. And I'll also maybe do a poster for your thing. Like there's things like that. So I think the important thing is whatever it is that you're doing, just make sure that you find a way to make them all fall under as narrow an umbrella as possible. And every time we've deviated from that, even if I thought it was the right idea, it never works out financially. So it's okay to have those variables, but just be mindful that the further out you go, the less it rewards financially. So I'm going to walk over to the light here as we say goodbye, because it's really, I'm really did not expect, hi, come on with me, cat. Really did not expect it to get this dark this this quickly. But now there's some light there. What else should we say? Thank you guys for being here. I hope that this was helpful. We're still working out a lot of stuff with the format, and we're going to be getting into some pre-recorded things. I will try to watch the comments section for this on YouTube. So if there's questions on anything that I've talked about here, put them down there, and I will do my best to give the best answers that I can to help on anything that you guys are doing. What? Next month's salon is, what's it going to be?
Just show up.
Just show up. First Thursday of every month. We're staying committed to just being present the first Thursday of every month. And we don't know yet what next month will be, but sign up and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks to everybody who was here, and especially to anybody that asked questions. And if I didn't answer your question, again, please put some clarification down there, and I'll do my best to be of service. But thank you for being here. And how do you properly say your last name? Negovan. That one I know I can get right. Unless you're from Croatia, in which case you will tell me I'm wrong. I had a Croatian teacher in high school that would always correct me and say, no, your name is Negovan. And I said, no, it's Negovan. He said, do you know what Govan is? I said, no. And he said, it means full of shit. Can I say that on YouTube? Will they censor it? Anyway, but it's Negovan if you're American. But that's it. Thank you guys so much. And we'll see you next month. And thanks so much for being a part of what we're doing here. Thank you.